After our guest survived breast cancer, her life entered a new phase. It's called Cancerpreneurship. This is the Cancer Interviews podcast, and I'm your host, Bruce Morton. Our guest is Cinde Dolphin from a beautiful place, San Luis Obispo, California. She's going to share with us how there are effective ways to combat cancer from sources that might be deemed by some to be unconventional. Now let's hear Cinde's story. And Cinde, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you, Bruce. It's an honor to be a part of your podcast. You've been doing it for a long time now, and you've had some really amazing people on your podcast. I'm honored to be one of them.
Yes, and I was just going to say whatever number there is, and actually it's pretty close to 100, we can add one to it because as of now we have one more amazing guest.
Thank you.
Cinde, want to start off the place we always start off, and that's to learn a little bit about you, exclusive of cancer, as you have a life that has facets that have nothing to do with cancer. So if you would, please tell us a bit about where you're from, what you've done for work, what you do for work, and when time allows for fun, what you do for fun.
Thank you. I'm originally from Denver, Colorado, which is right there where you're at, but lived in a number of different locations after that. My career was very dynamic. I was fortunate to be a marketing executive for a large brewing company, and then also served as a marketing director for wineries throughout the Napa area. So I had this really explosive career of allowing me to travel, to be a part of big events, and be able to drink beer on a regular basis, which was kind of my job. But I took it real seriously and enjoyed every bit of it, met incredible people along the way, had some peers that taught me very well. And so after about 30 years of doing marketing for wineries, I decided that I wanted to do something to give back to the world. As you mentioned, I'd survived cancer, so I came up with a solution that I felt was viable for patients having to go through cancer surgery. So I've been incredibly active. I've climbed Half Dome, done extreme skiing, traveled to New Zealand, to Africa. I've worked with women in small remote villages of Africa developing microloan businesses. So I've had a very full life. I'm very blessed to have survived. I've actually had 4 cancers and survived all of them.
So we had mentioned breast cancer. What were the other cancers?
So my initial cancer was in 1993, and I had a terrible cough that wouldn't go away, and they did an exam and x-ray and found that I had a large carcinoid tumor in my lung. So I had my left lung was completely removed. So I only have one lung, and then 3 surgeries or 3 cancer diagnoses after that were all breast cancer.
But you've survived, and we're looking forward to hearing your story of survivorship. So in terms of the breast cancer piece, for all of us who are survivors of cancer, there was that regrettable moment when we thought things were normal until they weren't, and there was something that surfaced that let you know that something was wrong. How did that manifest itself for you, Cinde?
I actually found the lump myself. It was in year 1999. And I went to the doctor really skeptical that it was going to be anything but just a mass. But having done a needle biopsy, we found out it was breast cancer. So yeah, your mind just explodes. You never thought you would probably hear that word. And when it does become a part of your life, you just gather those that you love around you, and you put on your armor and you begin the battle. And I've been very fortunate through all of my cancers. I've had a wonderful network of friends and loved ones who have carried me through. But it was quite baffling because I thought I had this incredible lifestyle that would prevent me from getting anything. But we're all, vulnerable. And I found out how vulnerable I could be.
By the way, we're confident you'll be able to learn some tips and tools to help you through your personal cancer journey. But first, we'd like to invite you to give us a like and leave a comment or review below and share this story with your friends. Kindly click on the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so you'll be notified the next time we release an interview. And if you or a loved one are facing a cancer diagnosis, please click on the link in the description and show notes below to check out our free guide, The Top 10 Things I Wish I Knew When I First Got Cancer. Now, Cinde, let's talk about when you first got cancer. You sounded, based on what you're telling me now, like you had a very strong and positive outlook toward this cancer. Not that it's something that anybody wants to do, but it sounded like you were prepared to run toward it instead of run from. That sort of courage is not something that can be taught or learned, but it existed within you. What was at the very source of your fearlessness, your courage?
Yeah, good question. And I don't know that it's suggesting that other people attack it the same way. I think that each cancer diagnosis is very personal, and each person has to determine how they'd like to handle it. For me, because I had always been a very optimistic person, I wanted to charge in and do what I could to get rid of it as fast as possible. And did go ahead and do chemo and radiation. I had a lumpectomy, and I thought that was it, and I was done. And then 7 years later, I found an inconsistency in my breast tissue. So went back, and sure enough, there was a different breast cancer that was diagnosed. I did another lumpectomy, and then 7 years later, unfortunately, we found yet another lump in my breast. And this time I thought it was very wise to consider having a mastectomy, though it was hard. It's an amputation. And, you know, the thought of losing, I'd already lost a lung and now I was going to lose a breast. And I was, you know, definitely concerned about it. But because I had this blessing of wonderful people around me to support me through it, I came through it. And then on the other side, decided to do something to help people who would experience the same frustration that I had. After all my surgeries, I had to deal with these ugly, uncomfortable, embarrassing, they're called Jackson-Pratt drains. And so they're very valuable. They are used to siphon away fluids from the surgical wound area and keep it from getting infected or other complications. But they're absolutely awkward. And I thought after my final surgery, I wanted to do something to help make that process easier for patients going forward. And it's not just breast cancer. These drains are used for a number of cancer surgeries, but also for things like bariatric and cardiac surgeries. So I decided to address it with something like you would call a Home Depot apron. It was very useful in that it could hold these drains that are attached with a drain line, and then that drain line is attached to the skin with a suture. And if you're not able to manage those drains, they can dangle off the body and actually tear from the suture. So in my experience, as I was getting released from the hospital, I was given safety pins and told to pin the drains to my hospital gown. And that wasn't working because when you go to change clothes, there's nothing to pin it to. And when you want to bathe, you can't pin it to your skin. So I came up with something like a Home Depot apron, and it was actually made out of a soft mesh, and it had a zipper closure, and it could hold up to 4 drain bulbs. And it was so much better and so much easier to deal with these drains during sometimes you have them for 2 to 3 weeks, others have them for months. And so for that period of time that you have to deal with these Jackson-Pratt drains, it really helps make the process a lot easier. So it was healing for me, and I feel like I'm healing others as they go through this really difficult time in their life.
Cinde, I want to do a little bit of backtracking before we return to the drain system you were talking about. But if we go back to your first diagnosis of breast cancer, you mentioned radiation, you mentioned chemo. those things, there's no way that they can be described as pleasant or easy. But for you, when you think back to your chemo experience, especially with your first diagnosis, what was the toughest part of it for you?
You know, the toughest part was stepping away from work and taking care of myself. I'd been a driver. I'd been, at work through thick and thin, and having to step away from my desk and take care of myself and there were probably about 3 months that I was dealing with chemo, and I continued to work, but not full time. The hard part was admitting that I was vulnerable and I needed to take time to get better. So I'd say for me, that was the most difficult thing.
And dealing with that, would you say that your ability to get through that area, did that still come with supportive friends, or was most of that pretty much internalized?
No, I had the support of friends and work associates. It was wonderful the way the people that were in my office came to my assistance and covered for me. It's just a wonderful network of people that when they hear you're diagnosed, they want to be there. They really are asking for a way to help. And sometimes the nicest thing that we can do as patients is to allow them to help us, because we think, oh, no, I didn't want to put you out, but it gives them something to do. So it's actually a lovely way to allow people to feel like they're integral and they're helping. They're doing something to help you get better.
Now, we're talking about the first time you were diagnosed, but what about the second time you were diagnosed? I'm thinking that you were put in a position mentally, emotionally, in which you could zig or you could zag. You could either say, I can't believe it. I have gone through this. I've survived this. And now I'm in a position in which I have to do it over again. Or did you say, well, I've surmounted this before. I can surmount it again?
It was probably all of those. I mean, depending on the day, it was probably my hardest diagnosis, my second breast cancer, because I really did think that I had done everything to get rid of breast cancer. But as I mentioned, it was an entirely different type of breast cancer. So I couldn't blame myself. It wasn't anything that I could have protected from happening, but it was hard. And I fortunately had some dear friends that came with me through the surgery and were by my side. And it helped me get through that. And then when the third one came along, I was like, oh, heck, I got this. I know what this is all going to include. And that was when I actually decided that I'm not going to go through another round of breast cancer with this particular breast. It was going to have to go. And it was a hard decision, but I actually had a bye-bye booby party and we celebrated it. And it came to a point where all my friends brought me ice cream to the party, and I had enough ice cream to last me for an entire 6 months of my recovery. So it was wonderful.
That sounds like a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Now, at the very top here, we trotted out the term cancerpreneurship. Two-part question. First part, for those listening and watching who are hearing this term for the first time, if you could speak in just general broad brush sorts of ways, what does that mean, cancerpreneurship?
It allows the patient to be an innovator. It seems like the day-to-day issues that come up are not addressed by the big medical supply companies, the big pharmas. They're busy, generating income through coming up with high-tech, high-dollar items that can be used by hospitals. Unfortunately, though, I don't think they talk to the patient and ask what would really make your life easier, or how could we make it better for you going through this. So a cancerpreneur is someone who says, listen, I've been there. I know what's difficult. I'd like to help you come up with solutions that will help the other patients who are going to be going through something similar.
You kind of answered my second question, but I'll throw it at you anyway. You've already answered it in part, but I asked you what it means and why is there a need for it? I think you've answered that in large part, but I'll ask you again. Why is there a need for cancerpreneurship? What sort of void does it fill?
Well, Well, one of the beautiful things that Dr. Herbert Simon, who was the 1978 Nobel Peace Prize winner, came up with, he said, some of the best solutions come from a place of empathy. And if you can submit yourself to be in the shoes of the person who's going through the difficulty, you can come up with, you can discover, you can innovate things that will improve their life. So it's really, I think it's actually called patient ideation, and having a patient give their solutions to the medical industry and allowing the medical industry to take advice from the patient. It'd be a wonderful development in this industry.
So would you say, and we're going a little bit off course here, but I'm still interested in hearing your argument or your answer on this. Do you think that overall our healthcare system in this country would be better if big healthcare did more listening?
Absolutely. I believe that patients should be at the table. They should be part of the R&D department. I think big medical care industry has to listen to what's going on in the low-tech world, down at the ground level, because there are so many ways we can make it easier on patients to get through what is a really difficult time in their life.
Cinde, in my advancing age, I see more television, and a byproduct of seeing more television is seeing more commercials, and a byproduct of seeing more commercials is seeing more commercials for big pharma originated products. And sometimes when I'm looking at those commercials in little tiny letters that I think the advertiser really doesn't want you to see, it'll say that this product has yet to gain FDA approval. So I'm gonna kind of turn the tables a little bit and say, what about what about some of the things that come from cancerpreneurs? I don't know if they necessarily need FDA approval, but should people who learn about some of these products have a certain healthy skepticism?
Of course. I mean, it's true of even FDA approved products. We need to be aware. And I think that cancerpreneurs can come up with ideas for products. I don't know that they necessarily need to be the commercial producers of the products, but I think that if we could work with a lot of healthcare innovation centers, which are becoming more popular. Hospitals are starting innovation right within their walls. If we can have an approach to those innovation centers to bring the information that from there can be taken to a commercial place, I think it'd be much better than having us as individuals try to get FDA approval or getting products out there that may or may not be helpful.
All right, Cinde, I'm going to conclude here with another two-part question. And I know you'll have an answer for the first one, but I don't know about the second one. The first one is, if somebody wants to learn more about your the fluid drainage system, for lack of a better way of describing it, if there's a web address for one to go to find out more about that, what would it be?
Easy. It's medicaldraincarrier.com. So really easy, medicaldraincarrier.com.
Now, here's the second part, and you may or may not have an answer for this, but if somebody thinks that what you're doing sounds like a very good and positive thing, and if they expand that thought and think that there are other cancerpreneurs out there that are doing good things and they would like to learn more about what other cancerpreneurs are doing, is there any place they can go, or do they just have to do a bunch of looking on their own?
Well, I would like them to reach out to me because I have consulted with a number of cancerpreneurs because I presented papers on how critical it is to include the patient in developing solutions to day-to-day problems. So I'd be happy to share the info. I have a paper that was in a journal that has also some additional information about cancerpreneurs. I think that one of the quotes that I used in my paper is particularly meaningful, and it came from my oncologist, and he said, equipping a patient with the knowledge that their own creation can improve the outcome of others only adds to their own healing process. So cancer patients can actually help themselves heal if they're thinking about how to help others. It's a wonderful process.
Cinde, I want to get back to you and your cancer journey as we start to wrap up here, and that is, you have told us that you've led a very active lifestyle with some of the outdoors stuff that you do. If pre-diagnosis could be classified as you being physically 100%, these days, how close are you to 100%? Is there anything that you cannot do now that you could do pre-diagnosis, or are you 100%?
Well, I think age has crept in, and that's limited me. But I'm still extremely active. And so I'd say that if I were at that same age, I could still do all those things. But I am still very active at mountain climbing and running. And I actually live at the beach, so I do a little bit of surfing while I'm here too. So yeah, I hope that I'm at about 100%. But again, it's not for everyone. And I want to re-emphasize every journey is individual, and that each person needs to decide how to be active, and it's not for everyone. So I want to honor that.
Cinde, and here's the second of my two-part question, and you've already covered this. We might be a little bit redundant with your answer, but I don't think being redundant at a time like this is a bad thing. And that is that if you ran into somebody, had a private audience with them, and you wanted to let them know that in addition to conventional remedies for cancer, there are some unconventional remedies, and if you wanted to succinctly state your case to this person, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that there is a lot of ways to go about their cancer diagnosis. I would suggest looking into non-traditional methods, but I'm also a firm believer in the medical industry, and I do think that they have probably the best solutions, but that doesn't mean it works for everyone. And I want people to be comfortable with how they go about addressing their cancer diagnosis. But there certainly are some amazing opportunities out there to address cancer in a non-traditional way.
Cinde, thank you so much. You have given us not only a great story just about your journey with cancer, but without question, you've given us food for thought as to how to go about combating our respective cancer journeys, assuming that just about everybody who's watching and listening is either on one or might be going on one or knows somebody who's on one. So one more time, you've given it to us once, but one more time, give us that web address if somebody wants to contact you about your product or about other similar products.
Absolutely. It's medicaldraincarrier.com, or my email is Cinde, Cinde, at medicaldraincarrier.com. Thank you.
And medical drain carrier is one big word without any spaces or anything like that.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Cinde, thanks so much for sharing your story of how you've dealt with cancer and how you're dealing with it for others. Thanks so much for giving us some insight as to what you're doing for others. Thanks for being with us on Cancer Interviews.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for what you're doing with your podcasts.
Thanks so much. And we want to remind you, as we do always when we wrap up, that if you or a loved one are on a cancer journey, you are not alone. There are people out there like Cinde Dolphin who are in a position to help you and ease that cancer journey in some form or fashion. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.